Welcome back, folks. So today, got a few stories here that we're going to be looking at. One of which is the main story today, and partially part of our talking points. We got a lot to get through. Top story today, though, is that is mostly Iran. I know the weather balloon thing probably set a few people off. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit, as well as having a few things that we're going to be talking about out. But let's just jump right on into this. Let's not dally any further. So we'll look at the top stories that we found here throughout various news sources. All the links will be down in the description below, so you can check out these stories on your own time. So, first story. So, Iran is building drone aircraft carriers from converted merchant ships. We have a few. This photo here was taken, I'm assuming, here in November. Circulating around on Iranian social media, showing the Shahid Maladavi in Bandar Abbas. Basically, it's showing this photo here of them working on this cargo boat back here. Old merchant vessel. Probably a container type vessel, or a roll-on, roll-off type double type of ship. But we have it back here. We have also with it a couple other ships in the same dry dock that they're working on. So who knows if they're going to be scavenging parts from those to work on one, or whether or not that they're going to be converting all of these. In a dry dock near the entrance of the Persian Gulf, Iran's naval force is converting a former merchant container ship into a drone aircraft carrier. According to satellite and open source photos published last week by the USNI news contributor H.I. Sutton, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Navy ship, the Shahid Maladavi, is a former Iranian flag container ship that's getting converted into a warship to carry both helicopter and fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicles. This is at the Iranian Shipbuilding and Offshore Industries Complex at Bandar Abbas, near the Strait of Hormuz. As you can see, it looks like they've done a considerable amount of work. They've extended, looks like a platform. They're building a platform over here on the port side of the vessel, so that possibly it will take off in a diagonal pattern, or land like so. The conversion is it adds a large cantilever. That's the flight deck on the port side, like we just said. It's unclear whether an overhang will be added to the starboard side. The fact that the superstructure spans the original deck means that the traditional aircraft carrier layout is not possible. The angles on the added flight deck are also non-traditional. Possibly this hints at a flight deck running across from the port to the starboard ahead of the superstructure. So, I mean, yeah, it looks like they're turning it into a Navy vessel, so they're not lying about that. Social media photos suggesting construction of the angled flight deck. So yeah, it looks like they are building a possibly for long-range drone strike capabilities of the country. They're growing their drone capabilities, and I mean they are stepping up their drone game. Now this brings an interesting question, considering they did shoot down, I believe, an RQ-170 Sentinel, Lockheed Martin Skunk Works aircraft here, or just Lockheed Martin. It was developed at the, developed, I'm assuming, at their Factory 42 location, Santa Barbara, and it has been testing out on the test range for a long while. Where's that story? Oh, yes. Iranian capture and reverse engineering. So Iran did manage to capture one. I think they shot it down. They downed an RQ-170 that violated Iranian airspace in its eastern border through overriding its controls. It had captured the lightly damaged UAV on the 6th of December. U.S. officials acknowledged that the drone crashed in or near the Iranian airspace and that it belonged to the CIA and not to the International Security Force or the ISAF. It was, as was earlier stated by the U.S. government. The Iranian government released footage of the captured RQ-170 on the 8th of December. After examining the video the same day, the U.S. officials confirmed that the drone was genuine. In April 2012, the general, this was back in 2011, by the way, all the way back then, when they had developed this stealth drone. So we've had it for a while. He also stated that data was being recovered from the captured RQ-170. Tashem News of Iran reported that back in September of 2016 that the UAV named the Shahed 2, similar in appearance to the RQ-170 Sentinel, had been built. It was said to be able to carry 4 precision-guided bombs. The range was not stated. The Shahed 171 Shimgra was also based on down Sentinel. If I mispronounced that, I am deeply apologetic. The Israeli military shot down one right around February 2018 during the Israel-Syria incident. Israeli media reported that the UAV's design was indeed largely based on the RQ-170. Iranian Air Force Brigadier General Tumar Bar said that the drone was quite advanced and emulated Western technology. So, this happening back in 2011 indicates that Iran is stepped up their game tremendously. If they have captured or advanced technology that had been a closely guarded secret out there on the an NSS and Area 51, Tonopah, all those others, and even all the way down to Creech, all the way out to Nellis, then, this probably correlates with what we're seeing now happening down in Brazil, which is partially the next story that we're going to be talking about. So there's this, where they're building these new aircraft carriers specifically for drone operations. Well, now we have recently Iran's military reportedly sending warships to Brazil and the Panama Canal in a challenge to the U.S. So this story is from Fox News. It's a little out there, but it's also interesting. It also gives us a perspective to see what the majority of people in the U.S. are thinking. Excuse me. The United States is tracking warlike announcements by Iran's regime that it deployed 2 military ships to Brazil that are also headed to the Panama Canal, where Tehran declared it will establish a military presence. The U.S. State Department spokesperson told Fox News Digital on Tuesday, "We are aware of these claims by the Iranian Navy. We continue to monitor Iran's attempts to have a military presence in the Western Hemisphere." The Iranian regime-controlled news outlet Tehran Times reported... Regime-controlled. Sometimes I don't like the words. Sometimes I don't like the choice of words they use. Regime, you can call it that. You can also just call it, they're their state-owned news outlet, the Tehran Times, reported Saturday that Iran's 86th flotilla was now sailing along to the western shores of Latin America. The Navy's second-in-command said. So Fox News Digital learned on Tuesday from a Western security source that Iranian warships have not yet docked in Brazil. Senator Marco Rubio, representative from Florida, or Republican from Florida, told Fox News Digital in a statement that Iran's growing presence in the Western Hemisphere should come as no surprise, as the Biden administration has a history of appeasement with engaging with authoritarian regimes. Tehran's ability to expand its military presence in our hemisphere should be a warning sign, especially as it seeks to support left-wing Marxist regimes. Where the fuck did that come from? So, yes, I know they're more or less referring to the Marxist regimes down in Brazil and down in that part of the world. Because they mentioned, I think, Venezuela a few times. But anyway, continuing along, just before we get sidetracked here with more things that Fox News can get wrong, there's for some reason, somebody was so afraid of their left-wing Marxist regime thing, so they decided to add that in. Oh, like a little helicopter. That's, of course, one of the Iranian boats that went down over there. I think they recently just left Rio de Janeiro, and they're on their way up to Panama. They should be there by the 7th, I think, according to this article. So Representative Maria Salazar of Florida told Fox Digital Iran is aggressively strengthening its ties with the Western Hemisphere through like-minded socialist regimes in Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. They are also looking for opportunities elsewhere, and it's no coincidence that Iranian ships are docking in Brazil just a month after socialists retook the country. So, well, and that was another thing. I don't really want to get into it now, but basically, Brazil went through their government's kind of being re-changed. They voted in, and I think, now, regardless of whether or not you believe the votes were, a setup or whatever, like the voting was rigged, that, and they're going through that down there enough as it is, where there's people saying that, well, the vote was changed. And I wonder where we heard that before. But, they stole the vote. But, I mean, it's no secret that Brazil probably wanted to change. This is a fairly modern country. And if they want to go for a more socialistic view, that of the most of mainland Europe, then they have every right to go towards those government views, especially if it helps their citizens out and all that. So back in early January, the commander of the Islamic Republic's Navy, Rear Admiral Shahram Irani, told the Iranian regime-controlled Fars News, all of this is just regime-controlled. Like, ever consider maybe that these people are just as patriotic about their country as most Americans are about theirs? So, yeah. They've been present in all strategic straits of the world, and we have not been present in only two. One of which we will be present this year, and we'll be planning to be present in the Panama Canal. So they're going to go visit around. The clerical regime's military indifference or interference in the vital Panama Canal shipping transport passage could damage U.S. trade and rattle global economic market. A staggering 16% of the world's shipping fleet is registered in Panama. that's significant. The Tehran Times reported that the Iranian Rear Admiral Hajam al-Kavani told the U.S.-sanctioned Iranian news outlet Press TV that the flotilla of warships will dock in Rio de Janeiro. So, as far as I'm aware, this is slightly a few days old, so they probably already docked. He added that Iranian's military might is increasing day to day despite all the pressure against the Islamic State over the past 43 years. As you just know, they just received attacks on a couple of their drone manufacturing plants and some of their munition plants, having some fires and some missiles launched that way inside, into their country. So they're probably not happy about that, and they're probably, trying to figure out who threw those missiles in there. So they're, as much as we build up our national defense, other countries are doing the same. So the same Western security source told Fox News Digital that Iran doesn't have a growing military presence in Central America. However, that same source also noted concern about Iran's desire to project power in the Americas, and that the governments around the region need to be engaged regarding Iran's destabilizing international role. So, regardless of what you think about it, a country like Iran moving into our backyard, I don't see anything good coming from this at all. I try to remain neutral on situations like this. And here's another story. This is from Israel National News. So they're probably paying close attention to this as well. And Iran's probably getting a little... Now, regardless of what you think about Israel and all that, this, I try to look at everyone's news. So, yeah, you gotta stay connected through everyone, not just the news that's in your country, but I always suggest reaching out, even if you have to, just like how the CIA probably daily read, had somebody reading Pravda newspaper out of the Soviet Union every day, as we should probably be monitoring other countries as well. The U.S. State Department is closely monitoring a claim by the Iranian regime that it has sent 2 Navy ships to Brazil, whose ultimate destination is the Panama Canal. Now, this is mostly, they're just saying it. The story is very similar to Fox News in a way. If anything, I feel that maybe Fox News might have, or that this news source might have taken the source from Fox News. So everyone's jumping on the story in their own way. Representative Maria Salazar in this here saying that she blames the Biden administration for supporting the Iranian-friendly socialist and left-wing regimes in Latin America. So, I mean, take it with what you may have, Miss Maria Salazar here. Like I said, a lot of times, if the whole country, because, I mean, I like how the little mark here, so are they friendly socialists? Because I haven't really met any mean socialists. But anyway, that's happening down in Latin America. So, next story will be about China's spy balloon. Now, this again is another one from Fox News, and I always really like reading what they have to say, because it can sometimes be quite entertaining. Canadian news outlets are basically just saying, hey, this thing we tracked it from here. It went down to Montana, and that's kind of where we kind of left it. So this was mainly over Montana. This story is very in much development, so they're saying that it's a Chinese spy balloon, and I'm just like, how do you even know? Well, no one does, because China's saying that it's not theirs, and truly, if it's not theirs, then they might be telling the truth. This may be just very well some random balloon that was launched. I remember my father saying, well, it just looks like someone lost one of their balloons. That very well may be the case. Company had like a weather balloon or something. They launched it up and they were just doing some meteorological tests and it got away from them. Now they feel embarrassed that they lost it. That's very much possible. But they're saying, Fox News is saying, well, it sure looks like China's taunting the Biden administration with this ridiculous spy balloon flight. Maybe China's military just screwed up by sending over a giant marshmallow loitering spy balloon days before Secretary of State Anthony Blinken's long-anticipated visit to Beijing. God damn, that's a stretch. Jesus. Both alternatives are scary. Either way, China's spy balloon is a real slap in the face. The balloon is trying to park high above airliner traffic in unregulated airspace and scoop up military data. Honestly, the best thing for U.S.-China relations might be to shoot down this balloon. China's foreign minister sounded a bit off a panic Friday, with the spokesperson hoping both sides can handle this together calmly and carefully. Which, yeah, if it's true that it's a Chinese spy balloon, then obviously the thing to do is to not escalate anything that could be considered very negative towards us or them, both parties. I guarantee you this balloon was tracked by U.S. and Canadian officials out over the Pacific. The White House has been deferring for days. Pity poor Blinken drinking tea in China while this balloon drifts over our nuclear bases. It's not the first time China has intruded into American airspace. The Pentagon hinted Thursday, however, that they've acknowledged that this behavior of the balloon is a bit different. The balloon is appearing to hang out for a long period of time. This time around, a Defense Department official elaborated, and the balloon is more persistent than previous instances. Just look at the flight path. The spy balloon flight was timed to ride the winter jet stream for a pass along the Air Force's northern tier missile and nuclear bomber bases. For example, Montana is home to Malmstrom Air Force Base, where over 150 Minuteman III nuclear missile silos are spread over a wide area. China is building a large new nuclear missile fields, so maybe they wanted pictures of ours, like the drone footage you see on the real estate websites. Except that, as everyone knows, China has plenty of satellites capable of taking pictures. In fact, China doubled their satellites on orbit between 2019 and 2021, according to the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA. So another strong possibility is that China wants the balloon to loiter in American skies long enough to detect radio, cell phone, and other electronic communications, often called signals intelligence. Swap eyes in the sky for ears in the sky. From a tactical perspective, there's still time to shoot this thing down, the Air Force F-22 stealth fighters mentioned by the Pentagon could easily track and target China's balloon. The picture of the balloon bobbing around at 60,000 feet. As the Pentagon reported, the F-22 Raptor is the world's most advanced fighter and carries radar that can see dust grains on Mars, allegedly. Which, I don't know about shooting it down. You probably wouldn't want to shoot it down because, it's 60,000 feet in the air. So shooting it down, it's going to come down somewhere. And it's not going to come down directly above where it's currently at. The wind is going to carry it somewhere, and, God forbid, it lands on someone's house and catches on fire, and debris causes something, and someone dies from them shooting off. Well, that's collateral damage the military is probably trying to avoid. So that's one reason why they didn't just shoot it down at an instant that they saw it. You have to consider, well, where's it at? Is it close to a city? Is it over city? You're not going to shoot up missiles in the air and then have debris of missiles and stuff, because that explosion, it's going to come down somewhere. All that debris is going to rain down somewhere. So I could see why they didn't want to just shoot it down with a missile. And the same thing with bullets. You don't want to just start shooting randomly up in the air, especially at something that's not a direct threat. That's not actually directly threatening public safety. Engaging a slippery balloon above 60,000 feet requires a precise air-to-air missile shot lofted up to the balloon's altitude. That's even if they can box it and shoot it. Or the F-22's 20mm 6-barrel Gatling gun, which could shred the balloon. The complicating factor is it takes quite a while for the gas to leak out as the balloon deflates. The time and place of the balloon's crash on Earth would be hard to predict because the wind's aloft, as aviators say. That's what we just talked about. They were worried that shooting it down, it could go somewhere else, and it could cause too much collateral damage, or if it lands in someone's backyard, that's just not good. So do you think for a moment that China would hesitate to shoot down a U.S. balloon? As I recall, the U.S. stated flying drones into China's airspace in the 1960s to collect data on China's budding nuclear weapons program. The wreckage of one supersonic DF-21 drone ended up in the Chinese Aviation Museum. So, yeah, they shot down our drones before. We probably shot down numerous things of other countries before. If Biden opts not to shoot down the balloon, there'd better be consequences melted out to China in some form. China has no reason to send balloons to gather data on American nuclear bases. We have implored China to join the nuclear arms control. Xi Jinping has said no. And you go back to China's motives. I don't think it's really theirs. I think we're just kind of putting China on this because I think there's people in the government that are they're poking the bear for some reason. I guess no one really realizes that all of our manufacturing capacity is in the country of China. No one really, I guess, is addressing that, but I guess I will. That obviously a conflict with China could be a very terrible economic crisis for both parties, probably. But more or less, we would probably be hit. Us in Europe might be hit the hardest, considering a lot of our manufacturing is over there. Now, their manufacturing is over there, and they keep their manufacturing. Now, some people have said, I know I've heard people state that, well, with China, there's a few older people that I've heard of kind of, China, they won't do this because that, that's money. And yes, but this is also a country that drank the Kool-Aid years ago. So, not meaning that in a very derogatory manner, but just stating that their government, and they, that part of the world thinks considerably differently than over here, for example. It's very clear to see. But regardless, I don't think throwing blame around about whose drone it is, personally, I don't think that helps. So, I guess we could talk about this story. A 30-year-old councilwoman in the borough of Sayreville, New Jersey, was found shot to death in her car on Wednesday, according to authorities. Eunice Dumfour, a Republican congresswoman, was found by police with multiple gunshot wounds just after 7 p.m. Wednesday and was pronounced dead on the scene, according to Middlesex County officials. Dumfour was inside of her car near her home when she was shot, according to CNN affiliate WABC. The vehicle then took off down the road and crashed into other parked vehicles, the affiliate reported. Sayreville Mayor Victoria Kilpatrick said that she was shocked and saddened to learn of Dumfour's death, stating that she was taken away from us as a despicable criminal act, by a despicable criminal act. She said that Dumfour she worked closely together with her on the council. Beyond her dedication to our community, I can share that she was a woman of deep faith and worked hard to integrate her strong Christian beliefs into her daily life as a person and a community leader, the mayor said. She goes on to quote, on a personal note, I can't adequately express my feeling of sorrow to the loss of a friend, unquote. Officials said the investigation is ongoing and that they do not have a motive at this time. CNN has reached out to prosecutors and police for more details. Dumfour was elected to a 3-year term on a 6-member borough council in November of 21. According to election results, she also served as a member of the Human Relations Commission, according to the Sayreville website. So, that's kind of a sad story. I'll leave that one there, as pretty much stating that they're unsure about who it was. So, the next story I think I kind of want to talk about, this is coming out of Wichita, actually. Not Kansas. Kansas Today. Okay. So coming out of Kansas today, Wichita, the gray area surrounding the buying and selling of Delta 8 THC in Kansas is no longer so gray. This is a developing story that just was released yesterday, I believe. On Thursday, Sedgwick County District Attorney Mark Bennett said that when law enforcement officers bring him evidence of Delta 8 THC crimes, that he is ready to file charges when appropriate. Bennett points to Attorney General's office issuing the legal option in December of 2021 that the Delta 8 is illegal. In that opinion, Attorney General found that clarified that Delta 8 THC is a Schedule I controlled substance, as it contains more than 0.3% total tetradicannabinol THC. I butchered that name, by the way. I always do. And so this kind of leads back into an old story I guess they did about, and I've heard this not from Kansas so much, but mostly other sources, about how Delta 8 is got some level people confused. Now, I don't think it's a major problem. It's not becoming a major problem now in states that have legalized it. But Kansas definitely is probably one who's, since no one else, I guess, was going after it, I guess they decided they were going to go after it. At the time, the DA said his office was not in a position to pursue prosecution of a D8 case until local law enforcement investigated and presented a potential criminal case to his office for review. Now, he says that local officers will be engaging in efforts to further educate the community on the potential criminal liability for the possession or distribution of Delta 8 or similar substances with elevated immeasurable level of THC content. Bennett said that he supports the effort. He goes on to quote, "We recognize this is confusing to consumers to have businesses publicly marketing substances that are legally prohibited," he says. It is our hope that businesses and others who advertise, market, or sell Delta 8 or other controlled substances will take this opportunity to stop and conform to the laws of our state. Bennett said those who continue to have Delta 8 or sell it should understand that officers will investigate and present his office with evidence of such crimes. At that time, we will review those cases and file charges when appropriate under the laws of the state of Kansas, he said. And this kind of leaves us with, I know y'all have probably seen ads for it on, there's been a few of them. I'm not going to mention names of specific farms or manufacturers of said products. Regardless of what you think of THC, I see Kansas is taking the one road in the fork of the road of legalization. So we already know where they stand on legalization. And this is probably coming, this is probably spurred from like the federal decriminalization from it. And I definitely see the federal government legalizing it to more of a degree, as they are looking in on that. Not only decriminalizing, but ultimately legalizing and regulating it as a market. We see it in the stock market already. I don't think it's going anywhere. That's what I'm seeing. Because as you know, once it starts being traded on the stock market, it's kind of, it's going to be difficult for these, especially with a lot of lobbyist groups in Washington. And Maryland just recently made it legalized. It's Maryland, one of the states. I think it's legal in Virginia as well. So you have those two states pretty much right next to Washington, D.C., and it's legal in Washington, D.C., so I can see the federal government legalizing it more so and setting up more regulation around it for taxes. I can see it going the way of that way. As we can see, the prohibition around marijuana and all that is definitely getting better, I think, in my opinion. A lot of great strides in legalization have come. So, but we'll see where Kansas takes it. So Kansas has already staked there as unfriendly, I guess, to THC. Although I'll laugh if next year it's up for vote. So the next story is you need to detach psychologically to recover from work, professors say. This comes from, and the solution is commuting. This comes from Fortune magazine, for Fortune.com. It's interesting to see where this article is going to go. So let's read it together. This is written by Matthew Pizashik, and apologies for mispronouncing your name, and from Christine McAlpine. Again, apologies if I mispronounced that name, and the conversation. So for most American workers who commute, the trip to and from the office takes nearly one full day, or 1 full hour a day. That's 26 minutes each way on average. with 7.7% of workers spending 2 hours of more on the road. Many people think of commuting as a chore and a waste of time. However, during the remote work surge resulting from COVID-19 pandemic, several journalists curiously noted that people were, could it be, missing their commutes. One woman told the Washington Post that even though she was working from home, she regularly sat in her car in the driveway at the end of the workday in an attempt to carve out some personal time and mark the transition from work to non-work roles. And that's kind of sad, to go out to your car and just sit in your car in the driveway because you miss commuting? I don't know. Me personally, I'd be looking, we all manage our time differently, I guess. As management scholars who study the interface between people's work and personal lives, we sought to understand what it was that people missed when their commutes suddenly disappeared. In our recently published conceptual study, we argue that commutes are a source of liminal space, a time free of both home and work roles that provides an opportunity to recover from work and mentally switch gears to home. Huh? Okay. During the shift to remote work, many people lost this built-in support for these important daily processes. Okay, I see where they're going with it now. Without the ability to mentally shift gears, some people experienced role blurring, which can lead to stress. Without mentally disengaging from work, people can experience burnout. Okay, so I think what they're kind of mostly referring to is, it was the fact that people woke up, they got in their cars, and they drove to work. And then they drove home. And they were very much used to that. I think that's where they were going with this. So it is kind of interesting, I will say. So they go on to say, of course, they just said what we just said. This loss of space helps explain why many people missed their commutes. It's not so much that you missed a commute, it's that the fact that was a part of their daily ritual of trying to decompress from work. So I guess they couldn't handle just getting up from their at-home office and then, disconnecting from work while they were at home. In our study, we wanted to learn whether the commute provides that time and space and what it affects or when it becomes unavailable. We reviewed research on commuting, role transitions, and work recovery to develop a model of typical American workers' commute liminal space. We focused our research on two cognitive processes: psychological detachment from the work role, which is mentally disengaging from the demands of work, and psychological recovery from work, or rebuilding stores of mental energy used up during work. Based on our review, we developed a model which shows that the liminal space created in the commute created opportunities for detachment and recovery. However, we also found that day-to-day variations may affect whether this liminal space is acceptable for detachment and recovery. For instance, train commuters must devote attention to selecting their route, monitoring arrivals or departures, and ensuring that they get off at the right stop, whereas car commuters must devote consistent attention to driving. We found that, on one hand, more attention to the act of commuting means less attention that could otherwise be put towards relaxing recovery activities like listening to music or podcasts. On the other hand, longer commutes might give people more time to detach and recover. In an unpublished follow-up study we conducted ourselves, we examined a week of commutes from 80 university employees to test our conceptual model. The employees completed morning and evening surveys asking about the characteristics of their commutes, whether they shut off from work and relaxed during the commute, and whether they felt emotionally exhausted when they got home. Most of the workers in the study reported using the commute's liminal space to both mentally transition from work to home roles and to start psychologically recovering from the demands of the work day. Our study also confirms that day-to-day variations in commutes predict the ability to do so. We found that on days with longer than average commutes, people reported higher levels of psychological detachment from work and were more relaxed during the commute. However, on days when commutes were more stressful than usual, they reported less psychological detachment from work and relaxation during the commute. So their findings also suggest that remote workers may benefit from creating their own form of commute to provide liminal space for recovery and transition, such as a 15-minute walk to mark the beginning and end of the workday, which I think there is some suggestion to that, since we have been conditioned for so long that we have to have that commute. And it seems that popular culture is also have done that as well by, normalizing long commutes of sitting in a car and being stuck in traffic. I feel that movies and pop culture have done a lot to exacerbate that and to, make you feel that you have to do this, which that's not necessarily true. Of course, I've had jobs where I've had to make, I've gone from jobs where I've been right there, next to where I needed to go, where, I lived very close to work, and I've had other jobs where I've had a 30-minute commute. I've had a 45-minute commute. I've even had an hour-and-a-half commute to work before. So, I kind of, in a way, I understand how some people, when they get into a job and they don't want to think about changing a job to somewhere closer, that they get stuck in this perpetual loop of commuting. And they just get so used to that commute that an extra 15 minutes of that commute is not going to make much of a difference to them. So, it's an interesting story. I'll have you make your own, your own takeaway from that. And I think we're about ready for our final story, and that is 30 is too old to argue with people online, and people are sharing what you get too old for after your 20s. And I sprained my neck nodding at these hot takes. And this is from BuzzFeed. Aren't they like whatever. Alright, so the idea of having your life together by 30 years old is such a laughable myth. Just because you hit Jenna Rink's age doesn't mean you magically become the best version of yourself. With that said, there are certain behaviors that the majority of millennials feel are better left behind in your 20s. So I'm assuming BuzzFeed just kind of collected this information. Redditors of my age group added their takes based on their own experiences on what these behaviors are when they responded to a thread asking, "What is 30 too old for?" Here are the takes that stood out to me, and if any of the Gen Zers reading this think some of the points below are dramatic, Just wait and prepare yourselves. Oh, Lord, let's see what people think about it. Obviously, number one here, as we already seen, arguing with people online. From, I'm assuming, user Ching, whatever. Whenever I start to type an angry reply, I stop and realize how dumb it is, and then to delete the message. Number two, mind games and poor communication. Oh, look, here's a meme. We get a meme with this. So Liz says yes or no. Did you or did you not just say that you have not spoken to her? Silence. Oh, look, someone's talking to what I appear to be Ed here. I hope all is well. You look amazing. Thanks. Want to come over to the Philippines again to see if you're open? Yes, you can come here. You're welcome here. What? Oh, this isn't something to joke about, Ed, because this is her. This is who Liz is. I don't get the meme. I didn't watch that show. I guess maybe I should have. Communicating is difficult, and it's not something a lot of people were taught at all. So if you don't know how to communicate properly, you need to put... Oh, okay, that's what it is. If you don't know how to communicate properly, you need to put in the work to do that too. No one expects you to be perfect, but you have to at least try. And that means being upfront, using kind words, asking open-ended questions, and taking through your issues and conflicts, and a lot of other really important things to make someone a really good communicator. And being able to articulate your feelings is key to understanding them. The process can be uncomfortable, but you'll be better off overall if you do the work in your life. That comes from you unicorn. So, number three, sleeping wrong. Okay, like we can prevent that. All right. I mean, I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. You know, my neck's been kind of stiff for a few days, and so is my back. Let's see. Roxas 1011 says, my whole day is screwed up if I sleep with too many few pillows rolled on my stomach. Left the fan on or didn't turn the fan on and got too hot. I recently developed some sleep anxiety and figured maybe I just need a change of scenery. So I set up an amazing cozy fortress of pillows and blankets on the couch and fell right asleep. Then I had a kink in my neck bothering me for the next 5 days. I didn't realize until about a week later that my neck was probably hurting because of the half night I spent on the couch. Ugh. And that was from user _removed_. Number 4, sneaking up on someone. I was just recently trying to sneak up to my wife who had fallen asleep in her chair. The sound of my knees popping blew my cover. Oh. Yeah. I don't move around as good anymore as I used to. I'm just gonna leave it. Judging people for what they enjoy at an older age. That people do need to change. So, I rarely cringe anymore. I just like seeing someone happy, being themselves, and unabashedly feeling joy. I don't need to get it. Joy should be encouraged. It's hard to find for many of us. And I feel that, actually. Trying to go pro in most sports. So it's wild to be in your 30s and realize that most everyone you watch in sports or the Olympics is younger than you. Yep. That's very much true. Living your life for other people's happiness and making yourself miserable for it. Yes, please. That actually is something very much, that's enough said. Owning only one towel. You should already own more than one. But if you're older than 30 and it's some serious financial trouble, you should want better for yourself. Get another towel. Alright, that was a funny meme. Being up to date on slang. I'm 32 and realizing I have no concept of current slang terms whatsoever. I feel that too, you know. Like, I really like modern slang terms that the kids are using nowadays. I'm not really fully, I don't really fully understand those a whole lot either. You know, this user, A Stone 4120 here says that I'm 34 years old. My husband and I have a full 15-minute conversation discussing the meaning and origin of no cap. The discussion included a Google search and a visit to Wikipedia and Urban Dictionary. That's when I knew my youth was over. There wasn't much of it left anyway, but I think that was officially it. Oh. Number 10, I think that, no, there's more. Pretending to be interested. You ever just like walk away from a horrible conversation while someone is mid-sentence about some crap? Great feeling. Oh yeah. Number 11, not much. It might not feel like it now, but the world is your oyster at 30. I don't even really know what that means. I don't really like oysters. But, user... we're gonna redact that whole user, but, you're still young, but you finally have enough knowledge to, to make wiser decisions and confidence enough to not pull up with BS. At least that's, what it's been like for me. I feel like I didn't start living life until I was 28. I mean, there is some truth to that. But you have to get out there earlier to live life. If you hadn't by 30, then you might come into walls. Or you might you definitely you don't want to have any too many big regrets in life. Number 12. Putting up with BS after your 20s, the tolerance for people's bullshit drops so much from what we usually tolerate when we're younger. I finally realized I can walk away if I don't like something. I think that's a big thing. A lot of people need to just learn to either drop stuff or just like walk away. Yeah. So, the first time I realized this was so relieving, I was at my grandma's Christmas party and my family was casually bringing up the bullying they did to me when I was a kid. I don't like 95% of my family and thought to myself, well, I don't like these people, but I drove myself here. Wait, I drove myself here? Oh, so I can just drive myself back home. And I left. Now every time I'm somewhere I don't like, I just walk away and leave. That was from user XDX Rock X. I guess D Rock. Number 13. Not knowing basic survival skills like cooking or doing your laundry and relying on someone else to do it for you. I knew something like this was going to come up. Which, yeah, there's probably quite a few people out there that don't know how to cook, that don't know really how to do laundry efficiently. But I feel that this is a stereotype that is just typically something that they go to, and it's probably just padding. That's probably why it's in this. I know how to cook. I know how to do laundry. A lot of times I don't like doing laundry. And sometimes I don't even really like cooking all that much. Especially when, you've worked, I've worked in a restaurant and I quickly grew to hate it. I think we all kind of, do. But I hear this being like a good boomer go-to or Gen X go-to of like, well, they just don't know how to cook or do laundry. It's not necessarily true. There's a lot of us millennials out there that we know how to do a lot of that stuff. Number 14, dealing with nonsensical family members. Blood can definitely be dud, and you realize that because you're related doesn't mean you have to be tied to them. Jesus. Number 15, getting into a physical fight over words. There's a lot more to lose as you get older for assaulting someone over what they said. They didn't just, oof. Number 16, drinking milk without hurting, apparently. Oh, okay. Number 17, unless you have a major health issue or mental disability, having someone else pick up after you once you've hit 30 really shouldn't be happening. Be it parents if you live at home, or your girlfriend or boyfriend, or roommates who just do it because they can't live in a messy home and you refuse to clean. Now, some people actually do have, for some people they can't help being messy people. I believe that this goes for boomers as well as Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and even the generations after them. That's definitely going to be something. I've been at older people's homes that are messier than I ever got my room to be messy. And even in the background, you can see that, I do have a kind of a buildup of stuff, but it's not really messy. It's just a lot of it in a small space. But with this story, I feel that, or this number 17 here, I feel that, it doesn't necessarily, it's not a millennial thing. It's just, hey, pick up after yourself. Which is just good practice in of itself. Number 18, having the captions off when watching TV at home. I have to have the captions on because sometimes I can be a little hard of hearing. Number 19, listening to loud music without hearing protection. This is something that, you all need to cut it out with cranking the music way up. Because that ringing in your ears gets annoying when you're trying to go to sleep. I'm just going to say that out loud. And the louder the music is, the more likely you are damaging those hair follicles in your ear canal. Oh, God, they had to put this picture up. How long is this? Jesus. Number 20, asking people you just met for their Snapchat as the sole means of initial communication. Number 21, and finally, 30 is too old to be worrying about what you'll too old for. If it makes you happy, do it. And I knew BuzzFeed was probably going to add this in. Because, it's kind of a liability for them to say this is what you shouldn't do when you're 30. It's like, well, who cares about what you think? And that is true. So, scene transition. So these are some stories. I don't know about that last one with BuzzFeed. I find myself often questioning what comes from BuzzFeed. So I usually that's what this episode is, or this podcast was mostly about. Just seeing just what big mainstream media is spewing out. Mostly because when I read that Fox News article about the Iranian boats, and I couldn't help but notice that they were very hung up on Marxism and socialism, so much so that I feel that they might have been distracted by that when they wrote the article. There's really, they're clearly, Iran is expanding, and because of the recent attacks that they had in Israel, they probably are projecting some form of strength, which I don't know how you feel about whether or not they should do it, but I feel that that may be a reason why, because, you know, if they're shown that they didn't do anything because of the strike within their own country, then people probably wouldn't take them serious. So this is probably a way for Iran to come out and say, hey, you know, we're not just some country you can push around and bully anymore. And to a certain point, I think Iran does have every single right to defend itself if it feels threatened. The same way I feel that about Israel, that they, you know, if they are directly threatened, that they should be able to defend themselves, as well as most other countries, or all other countries, do have the right to defend themselves if they are directly threatened. I do not condone. Do I condone some of these actions? No, I don't. Escalating tensions between nations, are putting up walls instead of building bridges. We could probably do so much better as a species, but yet we still, to this day, fight each other tooth and nail over every single thing. And I'm not saying colonization caused it, but it certainly didn't help when all of our individual nations spread out, and, you know, and I could go further into that, but I think that's mostly enough for today. So I think with that, but I think that's enough for today, ladies and gentlemen. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. I know I kind of enjoy a lot of telling you news I find. If you have any questions or comments, you know, don't forget to comment down below. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, I think that's it. So, good night, folks. I hope you have a good one.